So let's start with our initial reading from Living Spring, text 83. Let us go further. Therefore, leaving the elementary teachings about Christ behind, let us go on to maturity, not relaying the foundation of reputancy from acts that led to death. Paul, Hebrews 6:1. Accepting the power of Jesus, remaining certain of one's own resurrection after death, and comforting oneself with the benefits of faith constitute a rudimentary phase in learning about the gospel. Practicing the lessons we have learned by associating them with our everyday lives represents the living and the sanctifying course. The student that never goes beyond reciting the alphabet will never penetrate the luminous mental realm of the great masters. It is not enough to place our soul at the door of the temple and kneel reverently. We have to return to our usual pathways and manifest within ourselves the principles of redemptive faith, thus sublimating our everyday lives. What would we say about a worker that only went up to the door of his workshop and praised its greatness without dedicating himself to the work it demands? What would we say about an admirably equipped ship that remained in port without ever sailing? There are thousands of believers in the good news in this lamentable position of stagnation. They are usually persons who are correct regarding all the rudimentary principles of Christ's doctrine. They believe, they worship, they console themselves faultlessly, but they do not progress in order to become wiser and nobler. From the human point of view, they do not know how to act, to struggle, or to suffer when alone. In order to counteract such problems, Paul states with profound wisdom, leaving the elementary teachings about the doctrine of Jesus behind, let us go on to perfection, not repenting over and over again. Otherwise, we are nothing more than authors of dead works. Therefore, let us not be like students who study and study, but who never learn how to harmonize themselves with the lesson. And let us also remember that if repetency is useful from time to time, repenting over and over is a sign of stubbornness and weakness. Let us pray. So let's take a deep breath and harmonize ourselves, connecting with the superior spirits, and first being grateful for this opportunity for us to be here to learn a little bit more about God and Jesus' teaching. Let's be grateful for this house of love that is here for us to give us the information, to help us with our path of self-enlightenment. Let's ask that this meeting again can be a very fruitful one where we can take the teachings and apply and reflect into our daily lives. So be it. All right. So this is the English version of a Portuguese lecture that I did, I think, almost 3 weeks ago, where we're going to talk about the word. The word, as we know, is changing. And we're going to reflect, what is my role in this process? Do I even have a role? How should I behave? And what should I do to contribute with this process? So this is the lecture is based on this book, Em Português Terra, Mundo de Regeneração em Você, or Planet Earth, A World of Regeneration in You. And as I mentioned, the objective today is kind of to answer that first question. what do I have to do with all this process? So let's reflect on the transition of planet Earth from a world of trials and expiations to a world of regeneration and my role in this. If you're interested, there's a lot of information available about this topic, but Eric did a lecture in English as well, I think a year ago, February 25th or 28th, where he talks about the world is changing and reflect on the gospel according to Spiritism, the Genesis, and also the book of Spiritism, the book of spirits. Today, I'm going to take a very simple approach where we're going to reflect on the Gospel of Matthew 24, verses 3 to 25. And because 2,000 years ago, Jesus already started talking about this. And it's so interesting that even 2,000 years, it's so current. Everything that he says in Matthew, it's so related to everything that's happening right now to the earth. So in this chapter, Jesus talked about everything that the earth is going through. So let's start with the first verse. And as he sat up on the Mount of Olives, the disciples come unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So, if we analyze end of the world, thy coming, some people, when we study those texts, we take a little bit literally, right? So, end of the world. It's no earth anymore. Everything's going to kind of explode, right? So that's why when we go into that literary interpretation, it doesn't quite ring a bell, or it doesn't sound logical, right? And especially, so the end of the word doesn't exist anymore, and the thy coming, some people say that God will descend with all the angels and with the trumpets, and all the good will be saved, and all the bad will be judged and going to another place, right? So that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So if the end of the world, as this physical thing, it's not what makes more sense, what do you think what does it mean, this end of the world? If it's not the world won't exist anymore, what's going to end? What do you think is going to end? What does this end mean?
It's going to end the world of expiation and trials?
Yeah, exactly. So then this world of expiation and trials is like an era, right? It's a stage. So you're finishing grade 5 and going to grade 6 or 7, just to put an analogy, right? Exactly. And in this world that we have now, the evil still it's still present, right? And what is the difference between the world of trials and expiation and a world of regeneration?
More good than bad.
Exactly, right? So that's where love, charity, justice will reign, right?
The end of earthly things, right?
Yes, that material kind of connection that we have, that is the transition, that is the end of the world as we know it, to a different...
I was thinking of that song.
But when he says about thy coming, so who is coming? If you're saying, oh, it's not Jesus that's coming with all the angels, but who is coming? Or who has come already? What do you think is this coming? What is coming? Is that a person? Is that a thing?
Truth.
The truth, or the consoler, right? Jesus at that point, he already had in his plan, in sorry for my lack of English words. I think he's already had in his plans to provide us the consoler, right? Because we kind of forgotten a little bit. It's in our mind, but we forgot. So with the plate of the spirits and the spirit of truth, he put together all the amazing the 5 books to help us with this journey to transform the earth. So what is the relation then? Spiritism came about and the change of the earth. What is the relation?
It's preparing us for the transition.
So we can say that when the Spiritism came about, it started the transition already, right? Because Jesus gave us all the information that we required to go through this transition.
And I guess because of the consoler, Spiritism being the consoler, you're gonna have the truth, you're gonna have the knowledge to change ourselves internally. So that's why it's along with the generation.
Yeah.
I think for the point of view, when we start to think as a person that questions things and doesn't just take it for granted that the world is going to finish, that's it. Everybody's who is bad is gonna go to hell, who is good is gonna go to heaven.
Yeah.
Where is the justice in the system, right?
Yeah.
If we were all created as simple and ignorant, why, if it just this is the world and that's the end, why some people, as we all talk about it, right? Some people have more opportunities, some people are smarter, some people are going through a lot of hurdles in their lives. Where is the justice? So would be no purpose.
No purpose, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when reading about some scientists along all the years say that we came from a pea or we came from nothing. There is no chance to come from nothing.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, right? It has to be a point.
Yeah.
So Spiritism came to open up eyes for people to start thinking about that has something beyond. And some people don't accept at all because think it's evil. But at one point, people will start thinking and reflect that it has to be something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the world is changing. It's actually us as human beings promoting that change.
Exactly. And that's
the
the point.
gospel and the counselor, they provide us a roadmap
Yeah.
to be an active part of it.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. And you're going to see a very specific passage that talks about our role in this. But even in Spiritism, there is some belief that the word will change by the superior spirits, right? It was going to be like a touch of magic. Oh, zoom. Now it's regenerated. No, we know that there's no magic. We know that we need to put some effort, and there's a whole process for the earth to change, right? And a little when he talks about this, he says it's a two-way thing. It's from the spiritual world to earth, that's change, and also from earth to the spiritual world.
Just to add that there are like so many false or apocryphal messages going around exactly about what you mentioned, false messages that are like falsely signed that foresee catastrophes and say that parts of continents will sink and this will happen and that will happen. And some other messages or videos that talk about like deadlines and that kind of stuff. So it's very important also to pay attention to that kind of thing.
And that's a very good point. You're going to see, I think there are about 4 or 5 versicles that talked about the false prophets. Jesus, throughout this, he keeps mentioning, people come and deceive you. They will say that talk about on behalf of me. You're gonna see
Okay.
throughout this about that false prophet piece. Yeah.
Look at you, spoiler.
Yeah, just to mention that we are sometimes are expecting this Sodom and Gomorrah type of thing, that things will be destroyed,
Yeah.
or like the flood from Noah. But it's, I totally
And
see
people
it's
think
being-
this time it's gonna end in fire, not water.
Yeah.
April 16, 2021.
Yeah.
I love that t-shirt, like all the end of the world that I survived. 2000, 2010, 2013.
So if we say that there is a two-way, earth to spiritual world to earth. What is then earth to spiritual? What is our role then? What do we have to do with this change? What is my part on this? What do you think?
My own moral change. Like Allan Kardec said, this is the era of moral
Exactly.
evolution.
It's our old self-transformation, our old self-enlightenment, right? Of course, there will be help from the spiritual world. And you're going to talk about, there's a passage that says about that. Because if it's all up to us, we're still not there yet, right? So we need help. However, what happens if I don't do my part? What are the consequences if I decide, don't care about self-transformation, don't care about self-enlightenment? What is that consequence? What do we mean by bye-bye?
It's joy and the love and the pain. So.
But if we think about those people that don't decide, it's their choice, right? Not to do something. Will the earth just stop and wait for that? No, right? So what happened to those people? What are the consequences that they have to face if they decided not to follow this moral progress and decide not to work on themselves?
Eventually they won't fit in this world anymore.
Exactly, right? They will, como falar, regredir? Will they
Digress.
Will they digress?
No.
No. What will happen to them?
They'll have a chance somewhere else.
Exactly, right? If we are finishing 5th grade, ready to go to 6th, and if someone decides, no, I still want to be on 5th, yeah, you can be on 5th in a different school, not in this one, right? And
Analogy.
yeah, and that person will help the progress of the other school, of the other planet. And just to illustrate that, as we know, there is a spiritual hierarchy, right? So we have the first order, pure spirits, second order, good spirits, and the third order, imperfect spirits. When a little describes, here in this planet Earth, trials and expiations, and we are in the third order of spirits, right? The imperfect spirits. Those imperfect spirits inhabited worlds of trials and expiations in primitive worlds, right? In the planet of regeneration, those spirits don't belong there. You need to be as in the second order, the good spirits, what we call the benevolent spirits, right? So that's another reason that it just doesn't match. You can't stay in this earth if you decide or choose to be here, right? And he also mentions some people say, I'm going to be neutral. Won't do anything bad, but also won't do anything good. What do we know about that? If you decided to be neutral, you are already doing evil, right? And there is a category within each order, there's a scale, and there's a category of spirits called neutral spirits. And they belong here. So they won't be able to reincarnate and help this earth with its regeneration. In the book, in the Spirit's book, there is a question which I just brought one sentence that illustrates that, where Kardec asks, will goodness ever reign on earth? And he says, the transformation of humanity was predicted, and you are now approaching the time when it's destined to take place. Progress will happen when higher spirits incarnate and create a new generation on earth. the wicked or the imperfect spirits who die each day, and all who try to halt advancement are excluded and forced to incarnate somewhere other than Earth. Right? So here comes what Renata just said. Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. Right? For many shall come in my name, saying I'm Christ, and shall deceive many. So Luther mentions, there will be another passages about that, and the Luther mentions a lot about this, right? We know that we cannot judge, and we cannot pass any judge about other religions. If they believe, we need to respect. But what is our role is to be always aware and try to understand and reflect on what is happening within Spiritism, right? Because we know there's a lot of false messages, catastrophic, right? And some of them, sometimes I make the analogy where we have the evident, some messages like very catastrophe, you're gonna die, and it doesn't send that love, charity, and just message, but there are others where it seems they're all good, right? But it's still not promoting. It's still trying to dominate the big masses. What we call we can say uma mensagem mascarada. It seems that it's true, but it's missing the whole Christianity and the whole justice, charity, and love in those messages. So we need to be very aware, because the truth is the truth. And one of our role, a second role, in addition to self-enlightenment, is promoting the truth within Spiritism. And then he continues, you hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. So as we know, in the last, 100, 200 years, we have been having a lot of wars, right? We went through World War I, World War II, and the second one, like all humankind was involved. And you're still struggling with civil wars and violence and so many other things. But this is not the end, right? This is, again, just the process. I think the cleansing, the cleansing process that the earth has to go through in order to be prepared for its future. And then he continues, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. So again, kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation. We are seeing this, U.S., China. We saw this between U.S. and Russia, and so Vietnam. And the wars are there. In addition to that, we have natural disasters, tsunamis. In addition to that, we have some diseases, right? Some of those diseases that were cured, and it seemed to be solved, and now they're coming back, right? So, as we know, and here, all these are the beginning of birth pains. All of this has been planned already. It's necessary that we go through to cleanse and prepare the earth for its regeneration.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
It's not necessary to have the war. It should be clear. It's just our bad inclinations or our vices
can lead to that. That's a good point.
But it's not that something
it's required to
planned to have wars. The war is the result of our own
that's a good point.
ignorance.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
And there is some, we tend to look at the past and see like, oh, things were bad, like with wars and everything. You mentioned World War I and II. But in the 20th century, if you take the whole history of Germany, it's been most of the time in peace with its neighbors, right? So you have points in time when things happen like World War I and II. Because what we also more attached to the disasters than the positive things that are done.
And I'm going to talk about that, I think, in 2 or 3 slides. Some people, they think, oh my God, it's even worse than it was before. Some people cannot think deeply and compare what we had and what we are having now, which is, it's better. But in the book, Alero mentions it's because sometimes the media is so strong. It keeps reinforcing the same message of just that violence and that war that we tend to focus on the bad instead of focusing on all the progress that we have made. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. So as we know, with those terrorists, a lot of terrorist attacks, right? A lot of people that believe in Christ, they're Christians, they're being persecuted, right, with those attacks. Aurelio mentioned about the Islamic State, right, that we're very aggressive into forcing their ideas and killing and beliefs in detriment and killing other people, right? But these are all what we call, he said, those people they're kind of puppets of the evil, right? And as I mentioned in the beginning, the spiritual world is already taking care and is already working that those people, they will be given a chance, but if they decide not to take that chance, they will have to go to a different place. And so, reinforcing the point there that war is not required, but because we are inclined to the evil, that's what we turn out to do. And in addition to all those physical, natural disasters and disease, as Renata mentioned, we are kind of sometimes in this disbelief morally, right? And we are, like, the scandals are even higher, even more and more frequent, right? Yeah. I'm gonna miss now.
I think verse 10 came before verse 9.
Verse 9,
yeah.
6, 7, 8. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so then you'll be handed over to the persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. This is just to reinforce some of those that believe on Christ and are being persecuted. Yeah. So verse 11, again, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Again, reinforcing that's the second or third time that Jesus mentioned, and this is what we need to be aware, that not criticize other religion, but what we need to take care or take a look is the message that we receive and put through that filter if those messages are through and are sending the right message.
You mean I'm not supposed to spread them on WhatsApp groups?
No, yeah. So here is the key, one of the key points. So with all this inequity, with all this moral disbelief that we are facing, Jesus said, because of the increase of the inequity, the love of the most will grow cold. So as I mentioned, some people in a superficial form will say the world is worse than it was before.
Stop the world, I want to get out.
Yeah, I want to, right on that sentence, what is kind of your, or people's feeling when they say, oh my God, this is so bad. There's no solution. What type of reaction am I having? What type of stance am I taking if I just say, whatever? What am I doing?
Moral laziness.
Moral laziness. Yeah. And what does that do to me? If I lose faith in humanity, if I say, the scandals and I have no more faith and this is going to go just worse and worse, what does that do to me? Who is going to be most harmed if I take that? Me. Why? Why me? Why am I the most harmed if I take that stance and just disbelief?
Because because instead of keep walking on the path of evolution, I just sit down and do nothing.
Yeah.
I stagnate.
And what is my attitude or my stance with my neighbor?
It's going to reflect that, yeah.
I would just say,
Yeah,
I don't care about you.
I don't care about you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't work on yourself anymore. You're just not, and you're also not practicing the virtue of faith to raise
Yeah.
everything together.
So I lose compassion, right? Is that whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I lose that compassion, am I going to, if I don't have compassion with myself, I won't be able to have compassion with my neighbor? And what happens with my self-improvement, self-enlightenment? It kind of goes down. You see, it's how important for us to keep our faith and to keep believing in God, in Jesus, that it has, everything is planned. We have to focus and do our part, right? But there's things that we can do for ourselves. We just said, work in ourselves, self-enlightenment, transformation, virtues. But what can we do for the others? For those that are a victim of war or any other thing. What can we do? Anything? Exactly. Right? We can work in ourselves. That's our first. And for those that are far away, being a victim, absolutely, we can pray for them so God can give them the courage and give them the light and what is required for them to work on their self-enlightenment. Yeah.
It's a great exercise of compassion.
Compassion, yes, exactly. And if we lose that compassion just because everything that we're seeing and hearing of what is happening with the world, we lose all that, quote unquote, power and all that we can do for others. And also, what can we, so we talked about others, we talked about ourselves, what can we do for the Spiritism movement?
Try to spread the message when we have an opportunity.
Absolutely. Exactly. Work to, the truth should prevail. Right?
And give our example.
And give our example. Exactly. So, but the one who stands firm to the end will be safe. What do we need to stand firm to? Stand firm to what?
To the truth.
Yeah, to the truth, to the love, and practicing those virtues, right? And practicing and helping our neighbor and cultivating love, charity, and justice. But we'll be saved from what? What is to be saved?
To not get lost in the transition.
Yeah.
To keep going to.
To not go to the other planet.
Exactly. And
Not saved from
that's
hell, that should be clear.
not saved from hell. It's interesting because this is very personal. It's very individually. We will be saved because if we continue working ourselves, that's our moral progression. And to keep having the opportunity to incarnate on an earth that is in regeneration, right? And as we've been talking, not to be exiled to another planet. But it's important also to mention what question 642 mentioned. Be saved, stand firm. All of those are actions and efforts that we have to make. And it's important that those actions should be within our own strength, right? We have to do, or we're invited to do all the work according to our limits. It's not comparing myself with another, but it's me. What my conscience said, I can do this. I have the capability of do this, right? And as we learn in our seminar, as we practice more and more, our limit starts to expand. And this gospel of kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. So this is a very interesting passage. Because they say, oh, now it's all good. We figured it out. We are in the planet of regeneration. And the end will come. It doesn't make sense, right?
If you're expecting the world
The world-
ending fire, it doesn't
Exactly.
make sense.
Can you imagine? We go through all that work. We now are living the gospel. We are living the truth, and the world ends. So that's important. And it's just, it doesn't make sense. It's just that era that will end. And once we evolve and we morally progress, that is the beauty. That's everything that we are hoping, that love that will prevail, that is what we will see. And here, as we know, there's a lot of analogies, right? Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So if you take this literally, it's like, oh my God, for me to go to the planet of regeneration, I need to go to Judea. It won't have enough space for us, for everybody to go there, right? So what do you think he meant by that? What does Judea represent for the Jewish?
It was something to do with high mountain, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, there will be a high mountain piece right after.
It's
But there's
mountains,
a
right?
stay tuned. But there's a very important representation. Judea is a place for the Jewish,
Sacred.
a sacred place, right? Exactly. So our sacred place is for us to work in our vertical, right? To work in our virtue. It's not for us to go to Judea, to go to regeneration, but it's to work on ourselves.
And let those who flee to the mountains. So they're escaping Judea, no?
Hmm?
Keep going, I'm confused.
Yeah. And also when we mentioned that Judea flee to the mountains is a higher place, as you were saying, Carol. Carol? Wow, that's weird to say. Yeah.
So you mean Ben?
Banff, yeah. So that Judea and the mountain is that the whole holy place, and what we are invited to work here on earth is to work in our virtues, in our vertical existence, not in our horizontal, right? And he keeps saying, let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Again, be on the top or on the roof, when we say in Portuguese, at that higher place, working our futures, and do not take anything from the house representing the horizontal, all the material things, which is very interesting because in the book he mentions we are so technological, science evolved, but at the same time, morally, spiritually, still work in progress, right? Again, he keeps mentioning, let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. So here, cloak, it's about clothes, and again, vests. It's about that material, not focusing on that material stance, not focusing on our horizontal life.
I have a question,
yeah.
something that intrigues me a lot. I have met few people along the place that I have lived. When I seen people like being active in the community, working, having their faith, going to church, trying to be just a person in evolution, right? And all of a sudden, everything's forgotten, stops everything, falls into addiction. It seems that it's just going down. I don't quite understand how we never recede, we never go back, we always evolve, right? How do we explain this type of fall?
Oh, that's a.
I don't.
I think each case. I think each case will be a
Because
very
actually,
specific.
I live with two people that were close to my family, and then we don't understand why that happened.
But you gotta look beyond this life.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's not just beyond this life. It's you said they know. Knowing doesn't mean feel and
Yeah.
live that knowledge. We usually know a lot, but practice or feeling is really the tough part.
Yeah.
And most of us, when we are challenged to live, to feel, we choose to stay. So they didn't have the virtue. They just knew about the virtue. It's different.
yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's like doing a work that is hard to do. Some people take it to the end. Some people give up in the middle, exactly because of what Eric said, because they don't feel it.
And-
They can't feel what is going to be the fruits of their labor in the end.
Or sometimes people get so busy in just doing, and they don't understand, why am I doing this, right? I just don't understand. I just want to do. If I came here to the center here and just do, I don't practice.
They don't
I just
understand
know.
the point,
I don't understand
they
the point,
don't feel it.
And maybe sometime we just I don't have the energy anymore, and it goes down. Yeah.
And by extrapolating this to our spiritual being, most of the temptations or the tests or challenges we are facing now were chosen by us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And they
So I
still
can
have their free will,
I
right?
can use a
So
very simple example. Peter was one of the most eager to follow Jesus. Peter was always defending, he even cut the ear of the soldier. But at the moment he was challenged to show his knowledge, to pursue what he believed, he denied Christ 3 times. He didn't go to see the Christ on the cross, right? But later on he recognized. So Peter is a great example of people that can't live yet, but later on he made the exercises. So this can take many incarnations, and then connects to what Renzo said, or this can stay for too long, and then it start getting in the suffering process. But what needs to be clear for us, each one of us will evolve, and even those who choose to not apply the knowledge yet, they earn our compassion.
Yes.
It's above everything, because they will not suffer in a punishment way, but they will suffer because of wrong choices, as we do all the time. And knowing this, that's why they deserve our compassion, because we understand that's a very tough process, very painful. Instead of criticizing, we should be exercising compassion in these cases.
Yeah. This was an interesting one for me. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. It's like, what is the relation of pregnant woman with the transition of the planet?
If you think about all the spirits who still are more inclined to evil, it's not easy for mothers to receive a spirit that needs so much orientation, that needs so much work on themselves.
Yeah, and actually when Moura explains through the law of mercy, a lot of spirits that have the slightest chance to incarnate and try to work on that moral progress are giving that chance. It was interesting. That's why the pregnant woman giving birth to those spirits that have that chance to evolve and work through their moral and help Earth with that transition, right? And that was like, that's very interesting to give them this chance. If it seems that if they have the slightest chance to work, they're being given this opportunity to incarnate here and work on their progress. And then it will be up to those spirits if they choose to work, to keep going. If they do not choose to be exiled.
And this once again is a great invitation for the compassion, because these spirits that really challenge us as parents, they are having the great opportunity to incarnate one more time. And if we have a little bit more clarity about life, what a wonderful opportunity we're having to help this spirit.
Yeah. Oops. Then he continues, pray that your flight, can translate this flight as your progress, will not take place in winter,
September, yeah.
September, or on the Sabbath. In Portuguese they translate Saturday. Wow, so what's the relation of, so we don't work during winter and
I
Saturday?
think it's just not gonna happen like this.
There's another interpretation of that. So, a lot of people will just hear kind of bruising, right? I don't care about what's happening. But there might be a point where that person might like, oops, I should have done this, right? So the relation of winter, and back in the day, it was where the ocean is frozen. Like there's not a lot of activity, right? They had to stop. And Saturday is like the rest, the day of the rest. So here is, if you wake up, if you have that wake up call, it might be too late, right? You can say, oh, when I get old, I will work on that. But who can guarantee that you will get to that old? So this is a cautionary call to take action today, right? Not thinking about the past, not being anxious about the future, but take the action today. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So here is a little mention about Joana de Angelis' text that I can't remember. I think it's a great transition, right? Where in that text she says that the world will be wholly transformed, right? And the majority of evil will be eliminated. And in that new world, it will prevail love, charity, and justice. And that inequity that we have mentioned when we mentioned about the law of growing cold, that will be dissipated. And for those who are the chosen, not just the selected, they will have that world to work on themselves. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. This is a continuation of that. As we know, Alida mentioned, we are producing so much food, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of people still in hunger. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it cannot be up just to us to make this world a world planet of regeneration. We need help from the superior spirits. And that help will be provided to us. And then those days, the days of trial and expiation, will be cut short. At that time, again, if anyone says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. He keeps emphasizing the false prophets and the people that will try to deceive us. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if they were possible, they shall deceive the very elected. So what's the difference between the selected, if you are selected, and if you're elected? Selecionados, escolhidos. What's the difference between when you're selected and if you were elected?
Tell us.
Not all the selected will be elected.
Exactly, but there's a key difference. So selected,
Everybody is.
all of us, right? And later, in one point he says, everyone that steps a foot in a center spirit is already a selected to do the work. But now, the elected is the one that
Accepts.
and do what? Just accept the one
No, to do work.
and do the work. Exactly. And when we will know if we really did the work?
Maybe course of questions.
Yeah. And when in our death, our conscience, right? It's not that big judgment day where we have a tribunal, but it's our it's our conscience will say, exactly, you did what you're supposed to do. Behold, I have told you before. And this is just the end, and this is what I'm going to. There's more, but I think across and through those 20 plus versicles, although it was written 2,000 years old, it's so current. Everything that Jesus mentioned kind of makes a lot of sense and gives, at least for me, when reading and listening to the lectures, made me think the importance of my role in this, and the importance of staying awake and staying aware with all the noise that is happening around me, and what is my stance, what is my behavior to filter that noise and work on myself and help my neighbor. That's it. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Big judgment day.
Big judgment day.
I got scared.
You're done?
Yeah.
Okay, just to remind guys, sorry, should have done this in the beginning of the.
Oh yeah.
We started. We will have Cosme Massi here in October 16th, from 7 to probably 8:30, and the theme is going to be very interesting. Kardec model of devotion and abnegation. So be all invited, and invite your friends and families. And Cosme Massi, he is the creator of Kardecpedia.
Yeah.
Kardecpedia, and has a lot of works. He's from Curitiba.
Oh my
God.
People from the south.
He will be touring. He's not exactly from Curitiba, but he will be touring through Canada during the month of October and passing through Calgary specifically on October 16th. So, welcome to join us.
Tem uma interação.